just because it's busy doesn't mean I'm going to make more money. For me, when a market gets busy, that's not the best thing for me, because how I trade, it means I need to slow things down. When the market's hot and it's on fire, whenever that is, it always comes back, right? Maybe it's hot right now, maybe it's not. But when it does happen, you may be thinking to yourself, I need to capitalize. I need to make a ton of money. This is my time to shine. And it could be because you see tons of people on social media flexing all day, right? And you're like, if they're making money, I should be making money. And let me tell you this is just my own personal experience. Occasionally I like to give you updates on how I'm doing and let you guys know that I'm always growing myself. And what I've noticed, and I'm actually sharing this because not too long ago, I was on a really nice winning streak, and then I went on tilt for 2 days in a row. And I've talked about this in a previous episode. However, what I didn't share is what I want to reveal right now. And this is some information that I learned from speaking with other traders. One of them specifically is Kunal, a really good friend of mine now, who's been on the show. He's been trading for over 14 years. Shout out to you, my friend. I appreciate you reaching out to me during that tough time. After those couple of rough days, you just asked how I was doing, and I shared with him. And I'm paraphrasing everything I say forward, so that way you guys know this is not from his mouth. This is from my mouth. And what I learned from the conversation whenever I told him I was on a hot streak and then it got busy and I went on tilt for 2 days. Now, the good news is that tilt only wiped out a week of profits. But at the same time, what's frustrating is it happened when it got busy. And what I'm learning through that conversation that I had with Kunal was something along the fact of, just because it gets busy doesn't mean that we're going to make more money. Sometimes it can mean we can lose more, right? Because there's a lot more volatility. It also means that when it's a slow market, it's easier to identify your play. When it's slow, it's easier to see that's a great setup. That's a great setup, because there's not a lot of good setups. But when it gets busy, you might see a ton of potential setups that are real close to being a great setup. Maybe you can't relate. Maybe you can. If you can, I'm talking to you, because this is me. I'll see a ton more plays that are really close to being a good setup, but they're not quite there yet. And my FOMO starts to creep in because I see a lot of mediocrity working, and these other ones that may be really close to my setup, but haven't triggered. And a trigger may mean that it hasn't broke a trend line. It hasn't created a candlestick pattern that I like to enter on. It hasn't shown me something on the tape. There's something that hasn't happened. Every setup is unique. And I know I should wait for that trigger. However, because the market's so busy, because everything is moving, I don't want to miss opportunity. And instead of me just watching 1 or 2 stocks, I'm watching 10 because it's busy now. And so I'm constantly looking at every one of them, waiting for the trigger. And then I'm start to think to myself, you know what? These are probably going to work. So I start to buy into them or short into them, but small size. But I do it to multiple tickers. And they're all small size, reasonable size risk, no more than a quarter size on each play. But then that starts to add up, because if they don't work and they all trigger your stop, now you're down 1 full R, maybe even 1.5, maybe even 2 R if you're in 8 plays, right? That can easily happen. And it did happen to me. And it is extremely frustrating. And that's poor on me, right? I'm learning this more as I talk about it out loud. I'm like, well, why would you be on multiple plays with that much size, even if it's quarter size max, right? That makes no sense. Like, you should be way less than that, especially if you're in multiple plays. And I'll get into that in a minute and how I'm going to solve that problem, because I know someone out there can relate. I want to take this time to say thank you to our sponsor, Cobra Trading. Cobra Trading is the go-to broker for day traders and short sellers. And I'm not the only one saying this. In fact, Benzinga awarded Cobra Trading as the go-to broker for short selling. They have a heavy focus on direct market access order routing, so you have the fastest execution. They have some of the best locate prices and availability. They also have amazing customer service. I've experienced many different brokers, and it's why I use them every single day and why I'm proud to have them as our sponsor. Sign up now by clicking the Be The Trader referral link below and earn 1 free month of software with Cobra and 25% off all commissions. Now let's get back to the show. whenever there are tons of plays, there's still that great one that shows up. And it ends up making my day back to just break even or barely red or barely green, which all of that is break even to me. Barely green, barely red. It doesn't even matter, right? It doesn't move anything. And that isn't a big deal, but it creates frustration for me. And then that frustration dips into the next day, which creates the tilt day, which becomes even more frustrating. So this is something that, for the longest time, and I talked to another buddy of mine named Scott, who's been trading for like 30 plus years. And I mentioned to him, man, I feel like, when the market's slow, I do really well. Have you noticed I do really well when the market's slow? And then when it heats up, I don't do so hot. Either I just do okay, probably not as good as I do when it's slow, or I have a couple of red days or not so great days, or I miss opportunities, or I just take a ton of paper cuts. And when I asked him that question, because I talk to him regularly, he goes, you know what? I didn't really think about that until you asked, but if I think about it, I kind of feel like you're right. And that's something that hit me pretty hard. So, for me, when a market gets busy, that's not the best thing for me, because how I trade, it means I need to slow things down. It means when the market gets busier, there's a lot more opportunity to lose money and make money, but at the same time, to give you perspective, because I may be confusing you here. When it's not busy, I might have a watch list of like 10 tickers, and I'm watching them all. And I might be focusing on one or two. That's it. It's very easy to watch. But when it gets busy, I'm watching 20 different stocks. They're all on my watch list, minimum 20. And then out of those 20, there's probably like 8 of them that I'm really honing in on because they could all trigger at any moment. So I got to really watch them. That is the difference. Everyone's different. Everyone's level is different. I don't think I can maintain that. I can't watch every single one of them. And I can, but I can't watch them all and then trade them all until they trigger. And that is a bad habit that I created during a busy market, because I definitely think, or I had the mentality until today, or until that conversation with Scott, with Kunal, that, you know what? Just because it's busy doesn't mean I'm going to make more money, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to make, as Kunal mentioned to me, you would think, and he was saying to me that I would think that he would make 4 times, 5 times as much more money, and that's not the case. Because it's much harder to hone in on the good plays, and you got to combat FOMO because all the mediocre plays are working, and then the great plays, you got to still look for them, but you got to look for them in a ton of potential good plays because everything is moving so much, and then FOMO can creep in because everything is moving so much that you don't want to miss the real play. And so all of that combines, and you create a bad scenario that I have been a part of here recently. And I wish I would have figured this out a long time ago, but I didn't. And I'm sharing this with you because if you are in the same boat as me, maybe from my experience in acknowledging this and realizing it, it's something that I'm going to be able to solve now. And hopefully you can too. So here's a solution that I have. And I'll love to hear your solution. Make sure to comment below and let me know what you think is a good solution, or how you're combating this, or if you can relate. And do me a favor, hit that subscribe and join the newsletter. The newsletter is just to be notified of all our future content. Every time we release something, we're going to be releasing a lot of new content, new exclusive content. So make sure to join that. And on top of that, thank you so much for watching. But here's a solution. Number 1, when the market gets busy now, I'm no longer going to have the perspective, okay, it's time to push the pedal to the metal. Some of you guys might be thinking that's not the right mentality, but for me, it is. And because I had the opposite, where I pushed the pedal to the metal, and it just didn't work for me. And yes, because I anticipated moves way too much when I got busy. But at the same time, I need the mindset of there's a lot of things moving. So that means I need to be extra focused to narrow down the best plays, because the best plays are still there and they do move a lot more, and I can nail them, but only if I have the right mentality. So no longer will I be taking all these mediocre plays with small size and all of them, because there's so much that can create. That can create anger. That can create me getting distracted from the good play. I could take multiple small losses and then the good one comes and I'm scared, or I don't want to pull the trigger, or I'm distracted, right? There's so many things that can happen. So instead, when the market gets hot, I will focus more. I will focus more on disqualifying reasons and creating reasons why I should not take the trade. Because if I cannot figure out why I should not take the trade, then that is my A+ setup. That is my well, is what I call them. I'm always looking for the well. I want to find the well. And the well is much harder to find when the ocean is filled with dolphins and beluga whales, right? Those little white whales. I'm looking for the orcas, the blue whale, the sperm whale. That's what I'm looking for, right? I'm not looking for the belugas, right? So that is something that I need to be aware of. When the ocean's empty and all there is tons of little baby fish flying, floating around, swimming around, it's easy to spot the orca, right? It's so easy to spot that whale because it's obvious. But when it's flooded with tons of fish, everything's moving, it's a lot harder to spot it. And that's what I'm trying to share with you. Be careful when it gets busy. Ignore all the people on social media who are always flexing when it gets busy because they're quiet when it's not busy. But I know because thanks be to God, I could talk to a lot of traders and I can talk to them. Thank you, traders, for being open to answer my phone calls and talking with me, because I am able to get the insight when it's quote unquote slow and Twitter is quiet. They are doing fine every single day. And when it gets busy, they are doing fine. But the ones who speak up is when it gets busy on Twitter. That's sketchy, right? So all I'm going to say is, listen, when it gets busy, don't compare yourself like I did. Don't try to be guns a-blazing and make more money. Don't put that in your head. Still trade the same way, because the way you trade when it's slow, if you trade that way when it's busy, in other words, be in focus and wait for the best, and just know you got to be a little more focused, you may be able to find that right well and spot it and attack it and nail it. And of course, this is a metaphor, right? Don't go hunting for whales. But I love when I look at an A+ setup, I'm thinking those are the best fish out there. And those are the ones I want to get a hold of. So please be careful the next time it gets busy. And if it's busy right now and you're facing this, think about this. Slow down, take your time. And I'd rather you miss a good play. This is what I'm going to do. I'd rather miss a good play, because when it's busy, another good play is coming.